see him floating around. So, welcome to Czar when you see her. And now, we're going to start with our first talk. En avance. Go for it.
Hello, everybody.
I don't know where.
Hello, I'm Anna, and I come from New Zealand, a small country in the South Pacific, far, far away. And being the perceived end of the earth gives us some perspective on the problems and challenges of time and distance. And also, perhaps, of the opportunities. That's in the middle of the North Island where Lord of the Rings was filmed, part of it. It's far away, you can see. I am quite tall. Is that better? Okay. Feedback. So readers too experience the challenges of time and distance and limits. The time between books, which we know can take a long time, the distance between the reader and the writer, the limits of certain conventions. And readers now want more, and they want it now. And the internet, of course, is the perfect technology to deliver more now. Now, if you're a fan, and I regard fans as our super readers, the super audiences, people who really love the work that's produced by content creators, they want to contribute to those worlds. They really want to collaborate. They really want to engage. They want to push those limits, and they don't want to be bound. At this conference in 2010, Brian and Larry delivered Context First, which then evolved into Context, not Container. And Brian was talking about how the container had stripped the context from the content. So the endnotes, the footnotes, bibliographic information, underlying audio and text. And how in a networked world, this was essential that it come first so that discoverability could be increased and that publishers could compete. You're not hearing the audio. This is Brian talking. I will tell you what he says. He said, book, magazine, and newspaper publishing is unduly governed by the physical containers we've used for centuries to transmit information. Those containers define content in two dimensions, necessarily ignoring that which cannot or does not fit. And I thought about this further, and I thought, the other thing is that the container model of the book, that format, has become synonymous with the boundaries of the text itself. It's become conventional to think that the text This is not an entirely chronological line, because of course there are still oral storytelling traditions today. But, spoiler alert, here's Gutenberg. Talking about printing press determined that the story became fixed in a particular container. The format determined that you could duplicate that text. The idea of private ownership of the story became part of it, and of course it was written. And I see fan fiction, really, as a combination of these two modes of storytelling. It is once again seeing the story, the narrative as something dynamic that can be engaged in, engaged with. The context, of course, is essential. It is deeply collaborative and deeply social. But it is not just now oral, it is accepting those traditions of the written word which we have explored for centuries. So fan fiction takes writing very seriously. It's just in a different mode. And it's a performative moment. So it's a combination, a hybrid between the oral storytelling and the written book format. So perhaps we need to see the story, the narrative, more like this. So fan fiction on the internet. Obviously, fan fiction precedes the internet, but it's the internet that has given it shape. It originally started in internet relay chat rooms with programmers discussing their favorite book and games. And then in 1998, more or less, a lone programmer in California, Cheng Li, began fanfic.net, that has been referred to earlier. And you can see it's been designed by a programmer, not a designer. You don't need to read that, it's just to give you the impression. But it does, and it still does, function for the needs of the fanfic community. And that is, it allows multi-fandom works. It allows you to upload a story sequentially as a series, and that is one of the best things about fan fiction. It is exactly what Peter was talking about earlier, this daily update. You have readers can comment on the stories. You have beta readers who are editors behind the scenes who edit the story before it goes online, and you have private messaging. It's a very interactive community, but as you can see, it's not very attractive. And that was begun, as I say, in 1998, when the internet was more of a broadcast mechanism. And now we have Wattpad. And Wattpad is interesting, is that it treats fan fiction and original writing as the same thing. It is writing. Now, there are questions around that, but they have taken writing on the internet as writing. And it is aimed mainly at a younger demographic. And they also have real person fiction, which is not something that is allowed on fanfiction.net. So a lot of the fan fiction on Wattpad is about celebrities, in particular One Direction. And if you have any reservations about the importance of fan fiction, this number here speaks volumes. So this is just on Wattpad, 4,700,000 uploads of fan fiction, and a 60% growth from 2012. And even if those stories only have 2 readers each, that is a lot of people reading online, and that is where the younger generation is reading. So this is the fanfic online landscape. There's obviously more. It's just a representation of it. You have the writing sites at the top, the various sites that people use, mainly Wattpad and fanfic.net. There are also a few others lower down on the right, which have become superseded by Wattpad. And then you have BookTrack, which is actually a New Zealand invention, which I think will become very popular with fan fiction writers, where you can add soundtrack to books. Then you have the DeviantArt, which is an art site. You have Threadless, where you can submit designs and get a t-shirt made. TimeToast allows you to give timelines to your stories. YouTube, Vimeo, obviously. And then Comic-Con I've highlighted as well, because although all this activity is taking place online, these cons, Comic-Con, Paley Center, where the fans meet, this is where a huge amount of interest is generated. And a lot of interaction on the internet, organizing timetables, where we're going to meet, what you're going to see, buy tickets to these conventions. And I can see a time where the content perhaps is free, and you're actually making your business on these conventions and the products surrounding the actual content. So now I'm going to look at an example. I am a fan, and that's how I came into fan fiction, and this is my fandom, Castle. So for those of you who don't know, it's a TV show about a murder mystery writer and his muse, Detective Beckett. And this particular episode was called Close Encounters of the Murderous Kind, references to the X-Files and Close Encounters, obviously. And one scene is Castle and Beckett interrogated by the CIA. So there's a very prolific writer in this particular fandom. And what is interesting about the Castle fan fiction community is that because it's a show about a writer, it tends to attract some really good writers. They range from anthropology lecturers to doctor in India's to a social worker in London, schoolgirls in various parts of the world, university students. So it's a really eclectic mix. This particular writer is a librarian in Tennessee. So she has reimagined this. She's created an alternative universe where Castle is now a spy for the CIA. This has become very popular over the last couple of months. So it's called Close Encounters. Another fan has designed the cover with obvious references to James Bond and etc. Shay Chuckles is the pseudonym of the writer on fanfic.net for her Castle work. And as you can see, she's written 11 books, and each of those books, when I say books, each of those stories has got multiple chapters, and those get uploaded every day, more or less, or whenever she's got time to write, which is often in the early hours of the morning. So there she writes on fanfic.net, and as you can see, there are various comments from the people. We all are there under pseudonyms. I have a pseudonym, which I won't divulge, and I'm not there, though. I sometimes wonder, I have this very complicated digital life with about 4 different identities. I think perhaps I should just integrate them, and here I am. Anyway. And then Tumblr. Tumblr is one of the most important blogging and social media platforms for fan fiction writers. It's very interactive. You can reblog. This is the October month for this particular fan fiction writer, and you can see she's posted updates of Close Encounters as she goes along. She has an Ask Me Anything facility, so people can ask her anything, and I mean really anything, and she's very open and is prepared to answer anything anybody asks her. She discusses writing, she discusses how she got into fan fiction, she discusses her personal life, and she has her own body of fans. And somebody was so enamored with this particular universe that she created her own Tumblr account for I Heart Spy Castle, which is links to the audio version. So it's a playlist that the fan fiction writers created of existing music, and she's got a channel on YouTube where this goes. Effect somewhat, is a video that won one of the awards for Best Alternate Universe Fan Fiction Inspired Video. And this person who designed this is the same person who designed the I Heart Spy Castle Tumblr, and she's a designer living in Canada. And the thing about the video is it really shows you how much time fans are prepared to devote to the works that they love. Now, these are people who love the worlds that they engage in. And I feel that we should be embracing these people. They are marketing beyond any dream you can imagine, and they really support our work. Castle in particular started in 2009, had modest uptake, but there was a core of very dedicated fans who just blogged and were on Twitter all the time, and we're really largely responsible for keeping it going. In fact, it's got Nathan Fillion helps a lot too. So let's see if the sound works, and if it doesn't, well, you'll just have to see the pictures. But let me first say, so this is something that she's created. She's used snippets from various episodes throughout the season, so over the last 5 years. She's also used snippets from some of Nathan Fillion's other movies. She's put it all together. She's overlaid it with text to make it a CIA mission. And it just shows you how much time and effort goes into this and what can be achieved. So here's hoping. So if there's no sound, well, just look at the picture and it won't be that interesting, but right. Sound here. included, so she's included the names of the people who actually produced Castle, as well as the fan fiction writers there as a writer. So really what I want to say is that fan fiction on the internet revisits modes of storytelling. It uses the dynamic concept of story from oral storytelling, and the immediate audience connection of oral storytelling, established writing that we've been using for centuries, and new technology. And the internet really facilitates and underpins and supports an idea that text is hypertext, it is something to be extended, always deferred in meaning depending on the context. It's a very, very rich environment. And what I want to say is that fan fiction writers expand our story worlds. They do push the limits, but ultimately they bring our readers home. Thank you.
Kia ora. I'm wondering where my presentation is. No, I don't see it. It was on the USB stick and loaded onto the laptop. So I'll start. Yeah. Kia ora. My name is Adam Hyde. Thank you to Books and Browsers for the New Zealand Hour, making us a guest of honour. We're a small country and every little bit helps. Thank you.
No, we have it loaded up here.
Yeah, that's on here, I think. Adam Hyde, that's me, yeah.
There we go. Just 1 second.
Yes, but that's not in form, I guess, full screen.
Hit the green button.
There isn't
Oh,
a green button.
I'm sorry, yes.
View
It's a
slideshow.
PDF, yeah, okay. Do you see that?
Slideshow at the bottom. Wow, cool. Thank you. Well, now it's going automatically. Awesome. How do I stop that from happening? I'm not a Mac user. Does anybody can turn off the automatic scroll forward for me? Or is that it now? Okay, sweet. And if I push down, okay, cool. Great. Kia ora, my name is Adam Hyde. I'm from New Zealand. And you have to pronounce that correctly, New Zealand. And I'm here to talk about the death of the reader. But it's a specific take on the death of the reader. It's talking about the empowerment of the reader to stop waiting for publishers, in essence. So I'm going to unpack this a little bit. I framed it as the transition from reader to collaborative knowledge producer. A little bit of background on me very quickly. I've been an artist, was involved in an organization, Radio Qualia, some years ago. I've been manager of radio stations. And I sort of found my way into the space of publications, I guess you could say, or knowledge production through Floss Manuals, an organization I started for production of free manuals about free software, and from this developed platforms for collaborative knowledge production, book production, and also methodologies, and one of those being the book sprint. So the book sprints I've been working on for 6 years or so. Founded this methodology about 5.5, 6 years ago, and really been exploring it in a lot of different areas. And I just want to unpack that with regard to this idea of not being a reader anymore. So that's the context. So I want to just throw a rope around what a reader is. I want to define a reader for this instance, and I know a reader is many things, but I want to just look at the reader as being somebody with knowledge needs. So I'm talking outside of the fiction box right now. I'm just talking about books as units of knowledge, and the reader typically being somebody who has knowledge needs, buys a book, and then gets fulfilled on some level towards satisfying their goal of learning something or knowing about something. So I want to also define the reader as not necessarily being someone that consumes what publishers make, right? Which is, I think we get confused when we talk about books and knowledge artifacts. We confuse this question about what is a book with actually what is the publishing industry's business model. I want to get outside of that. I want to talk about the reader as something else, specifically this idea, a person with knowledge needs. And it's typically we think about readers with knowledge needs waiting for knowledge artifacts to be produced and delivered to them by the publishing industry. So this is what I would refer to as publishing. And I know this is a very specific take on it. I'm not trying to argue outside of that. I just want to cut off the slither and just look at this proposition. So I want to talk about specifically collaborative knowledge production, where readers don't have to wait for the delivery of this knowledge, but they can actually work together to meet their own knowledge needs, so produce knowledge for their own needs. So you might need a book on something, so instead of waiting around for that book to come to you from the publisher, that you actually get out there and you make this book for yourself in a very immersive and interesting way. So this is what I would call collaborative knowledge production. Readers producing their own knowledge. And I want to just talk a little bit about, I've done a lot of quantitative empirical research, and I've made a very sophisticated graph here which represents the collaborative spectrum. And I want to talk not about crowdsourcing, right? I want to put crowdsourcing at the weak end of a collaborative spectrum. And I want to put on the strong end of the collaborative spectrum other things. One specifically that I want to unpack, because this is where I draw my experience from, book sprints, is at the strong end of the collaboration spectrum, but it's not the only item. I'm just placing this case here because this is what I have knowledge of. So weak collaborative knowledge production, and I'm not talking about weak in the sense of, it's no good. I'm just talking about its weak collaboration. We typically have thrown a lot into the crowdsourcing pot and said, well, that's all the cool stuff is. We can all get together and things happen. But I would like to put forward the idea that this is weak collaboration, and it's a passive model, and I'm talking generally. It's coordination through technical frameworks often. I'm thinking about this sort of, the here comes everybody kind of ideas. It's a little or no human coordination, and it's coordination rather than sort of horizontal collaboration. Isolated producers, small contribution, no shared visions. That's one end. And on the other end, I want to talk about strong collaborative production as being something which is more active. It's not passive. The technical framework is not the coordinating mechanism. It's an enabler for the collaboration to happen. There's strong human facilitation. This is extremely important. It's intensely connected contributors. It's large contributions, shared vision, and one of the examples is the book sprints. So for collaborative knowledge production to work, we must learn the mechanics of the collaborative spectrum. We must know where on this collaborative knowledge production spectrum we need to sit to derive the kind of knowledge that we need from the resources that we have. And I want to go very specifically into one example. This is an example of strong collaborative knowledge production. This is a small NGO, about a small NGO called Open Oil, a fantastic NGO. They're all about oil transparency, oil industry transparency, or they call it the extractive industries. This is Johnny West, great guy, lives in Berlin. He's the founder of the NGO Open Oil. And Johnny needs a book, right? So he's been waiting for a book so that he can actually do workshops to actually make the oil industry transparent to people so that they can have a voice in it, they can understand what's going on. But because he's in this network, he also realizes that there are other people that have a need for this kind of book. One of them is Jay Park, QC. He's a managing partner. This is a real story, I should say. I didn't deliberately choose people that you would think would not normally collaborate. I mean, but I kind of did. But it's from a true story. So Jay, great guy, managing partner at Park Energy Law and Petroleum Regimes Advisory. This is a snippet from his CV. And here's the instructor of a international petroleum transactions course at the University of Calgary. He's been around for a long time. He's been on all sides of the fence, and he's an oil contract lawyer. He needs a book because he teaches this stuff, and he needs a textbook to get it in front of people so that they actually have a textbook. There's no textbook out there that will suit his needs to teach this kind of material. And there are other people out there that within this network that they reach out to. And this is, again, this is a very interesting cross-section, because this is not necessarily the kinds of people that you sort of think about when you think about intensive collaboration, multinational oil company lawyers. People like Peter Eigen, head of Transparency International, he needs a book. Cindy Kroon, these are all part of the network. She needs a book from the World Bank. Herbert McLeod needs a book. He's from Sierra Leone. Susan Maples, a legal advisor to the Liberian president. Jeff Peters, a corporate counsel. Nadine Stiller from GIZ in Deutschland. Lynn is from an NGO in Uganda. Sebastian, who's actually an environmental contract lawyer. And Nunyan, who's a legal advisor to Azerbaijan's state oil company. These are people, very high-level people, who know their stuff intimately, all from different sides of the fence: watchdogs, oil companies, and governments. And they all deal with oil contracts, and they all want material to explain how oil contracts work so they can all do their job better. So what do? They hire a small castle, and they hire me, and they don't wait for the publishers, importantly. They decide to make the books themselves, the book that they need. And the readers produce the knowledge by this strong collaborative knowledge production method that I'm talking about, or idea. So this is what it looks like in essence. It's a strongly facilitated process. It's these people that I showed you in these previous screenshots all getting together and working together in a very intensive, immersive way. So it's a fascinating process. And because I was taking the photos, so you can't see me, but I would be here, and I'd be like this, and they're paying such attention to what I'm telling them. But it's a facilitated process, but it's a very egalitarian process, like bringing all of these people to the same table on the same plane and taking them through a collaborative knowledge production process, in this instance to create an artifact. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. This is just some ambient shots of this process. So one of the most important things in this kind of process is, literally breaking bread together, sitting together, eating, talking about things. Living together in the same room, in the castle, working together and eating together. And just some sort of photographs of the process. So they make a book, right? So they go to the small castle just outside of Berlin, Schloss, and they conceptualize the book. So they go there with the title, they go there with their network, and that's it. And then they conceptualize the book. They kind of have title, subtitle, oil contracts, how to read and understand them. They get together, they conceptualize it. They're facilitated through the process of understanding the scope of what they can achieve in that period and what this book is going to be and who it's for. They write it, they illustrate it. I had a picture of an illustrator in there, Lynn Harris, who was part of this. And they proofread it, they edit it, they do everything. Then at the end of the process, they send it to the printer. They produce an EPUB, MOBI, screen formatted PDF, everything that they need to do. So they do this all in 5 days. And they produce this knowledge artifact, which I would call a book in this instance. And the book being very important in this area because it's good for finding grants, it's good for putting in the table at workshops, it's good for acquittals, it's good for outreach, it's good for textbooks, it's all of this stuff. It's a unit of knowledge that people understand and has a transactional value. And it's successful. So we all know downloads. I can't tell you how much of that is spam bots, but 49,800. This is a very specific niche that these guys are fulfilling with this content. So at least we can think that there's a significant percentage of that which is, going to the right place. But the most important thing about this is that they're fulfilling the knowledge needs of their constituency, and they are the best people to do that because they are the readers, they are the consumers of this material. They know what they need, and they also know that information. They have it all together, and they bring it to this book. So they are fulfilling their own needs, they're fulfilling the needs of their constituency. Much more important than sales or download numbers in these kinds of instances. It's been translated already. There's a second book sprint lined up for mining contracts. There are 2 more localization book sprints. Now this is very interesting. So this looked at oil, I think 8 different oil regions, this book, and generalized it into, what a generic oil contract might look like and how you would understand it. So now they're taking this and they're taking it to specific countries and getting with people locally and doing the same thing again, using that as the base point, but localizing it and looking at specific issues to generate another book, using the first book as the baseline content, and making it specific to their country. So this is why, for example, Peter here, pictured left, is very interested in it because he wants to do this for Nigeria. So he's part of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, and he couldn't get a book. And the book in this instance, this is a book, you can hold it, you can print it out, but he didn't have a copy of the Perfect Bound book, couldn't get it. So Johnny, printed one off. And what was interesting in the email that I got from Johnny about this is that Peter then asked Johnny to sign it, this printout. So this has that transactional value. This has that authority that people are so worried about. What is a book and where is this authority going? This book has that authority, in my opinion, from what I understand from the people inside of the sector. And it's not just a book. It's a website. It's a PDF. It's a printout. And it's been used for teaching and outreach, and it's been used by, and I can't say who, by one of the evil empire oil companies for induction training, interestingly, and it's been used by Peter. So I just want to posit this point, that we don't have to think about this model of, books and everything, the ecology that we have understand that's, associated around it in terms of non-fiction works, in terms of, the authoritative publisher creating a work and then delivering it to you, and you're waiting there for that book, and there it comes, and you're happy to have it at last. Or it didn't quite suit your needs, you needed something that was just a little bit more about this, that actually you don't have to be that person that just consumes what publishers make. You can actually be someone with knowledge needs and not wait for it to be delivered, but actually produce that knowledge yourself. And I think this idea of taking responsibility for our own knowledge needs and producing these artifacts through strong collaborative knowledge production, I personally believe has a massive and very interesting future. And happy to talk to anybody further about that wants to hear me rant. Thank you.
So some Q&A for our speakers.
Facilitation process.
I think Adam's the jump.
Yeah, Adam and Anna.
Yeah,
The facilitation process, this methodology, I'm talking about book sprint specifically, it drives out of unconference methodology, which is, if anybody knows this, I take personally a lot of inspiration from Alan Gunn from Aspiration, who's located here in San Francisco. It comes from this idea that, unconferences is a situation where you have someone went to a conference and they realized all the cool stuff happened in the cafe, right? So then they thought, well, let's make the cafe the conference, and that's what an unconference is. It's unstructured, it's unhierarchical, and it's led by a facilitator that makes all the connections. This is the founding principle for it. On top of that, you have a lot of sort of methodology trickery, which you might see in other kind of methodologies, things like kind of peer writing processes, getting two people to sit together. And there's a lot of complexities here in terms of knowledge base, readability, English as a second language if you're doing it in English, all these kind of things that come into the picture that the facilitator should see if they're a good facilitator and read the dynamic and work out those social methods to produce this content. So that's the other part of it. And the third thing is that really it's a lot about drawing the book out of the people. It's not like bringing the people to write the book, it's drawing the book out of the people. It's a much different approach than I think might be assumed. Yeah. I don't know if that's enough detail for you. The question was, what happens if you go beyond 5 days, and if there's what's the trade-offs? Well, I think most people would probably die.
Sorry. Ah, okay. Yeah.
I'm really interested about the model that you described in Book Sprint. I mean, comparing it against Peter's early description of the Lean Club. I mean, do you see those two as sort of fundamentally opposed models of production, or do you see a way that they can maybe sort of merge those two and sort of form a different sort of collaborative model?
So the question was, how do I see Lean Pub versus Book Sprints, or not versus, but alongside, and how these, what are the possibilities? My point, I think, what I was trying to do here is I didn't want to talk about Book Sprints, but I'm drawing from that because that's my experience. What I wanted to illustrate that there are collaborative knowledge production methodologies, and what we don't know is how to do them. And we need to know how to do them. We need to know how to do them from a facilitation point of view, and we need to know how to do them from a collaborator point of view, right? And this can only be achieved through experience. So I'm not saying Book Sprints is it, and here it is, bam, this is everything. I'm saying that this is one slither on that spectrum, and there are a lot of other interesting approaches, but I don't see much experimentation in that area. And from what I understand from my own experience, that experience is critical. So the sooner we start experimenting with this and drawing from each other on these experiences, the faster we go and the more we learn.
On the fanfic presentation, my daughter taught me about shipping and things like that. And I was curious, are you seeing sort of the birth of these really folk literary understandings and concepts, things that I hadn't really heard of before, and they seem to be springing up alongside the fiction itself?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the thing is that it's actually existed for a long time. And that's one of the reasons I said writing Undercover on the web, is that it's absolutely enormous. If you aren't aware of it, you aren't aware of it. And it was only once I became part of this fandom, so 3 years ago, I'd never heard of it. And then I saw fan fiction on my Twitter feed, and I thought, what's that? And I went and looked, and some of it is horrendous, and you wouldn't want to go there. But some of it is really, really interesting, and it definitely, just that slide from Wattpad, the increase in fan fiction, and particularly for younger readers. And of course, the readers are the writers as well. So we think young people aren't reading, but they are reading a lot. They're reading fan fiction, they're writing fan fiction, and they're doing it online. And so in a way, I think we have to, even if we're hesitant, I think we have to embrace that. We have to engage with that in some way or other. And I don't think that original fiction and fan fiction need to be at odds. I think they can be symbiotic. I wrote a piece about Kindle Worlds a while back, and from my perspective, they've got it wrong in the sense that they haven't really understood that the fan fiction is online, and it's that direct, immediate connection that is so important. Just having another story that you publish is not quite the same thing. But I think it is a really huge growth area, and and some of it is really good. It's not, some of it is appalling, as I say, but some of it is really good. Yeah. So.
Question?
This is a question for Anna while you're there. I'm an educational publisher, and I work a lot with educators and teachers.
Yeah.
And I hear the same thing all the time. My students aren't reading. I find your numbers really impressive, and would like to tell them that they are in fact reading.
Yes.
I know that I'm going to get with the international markets. I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback. Teachers should say, and I know you just said the quality is really good, but I would
Some of it is really good.
I'd like to hear about your vetting process. Is there a way in which we can direct our young learners and learners to more, things that do have quality? How do I tell my educators that yes, in fact, they are still reading? How do I reassure them that they're still getting some of the quality?
Yeah, that is difficult. When you're in the fandom, you find recommendations from the writers, and you find them, and then you follow who they favorite, because your favorite writers, your favorite stories. I think just coming in from outside, it would be difficult just immediately to determine what is good and what is not, because a lot of it is not good. There are curated lists. I mean, the fanfic writing awards, those are good. So if you search online for fanfic awards, the various communities have those, and those are generally the better written ones, the more appropriate. Some communities within fanfic, I mean, fanfic.net has got a broad spread of content. It's tricky. It's tricky. There's one particular, I think it's Figment, and it's not just for fanfic, it's for online writing, but they are aimed at a younger market, and anything you find there would be appropriate. But I can think about that further and see if I can think of some recommendations for you. But it's definitely worth considering. And the thing is that these schoolgirls as well, and it is mainly women writing. They write a lot. I mean, I'm just amazed that they write almost every day, and a large amount of words, and they have interact with as I say, the beta reader, who's another person in the fandom, and they take it all very seriously. It's not just a joke or just something they do on a whim. It's really their life. You know, something I feel very strongly about. And I don't write fan fiction myself, but I do read it a lot. I have my favorite writers, and the one writer that I was talking about, we actually, I did an experiment with her. I said, would she be prepared to do something similar for an original fiction? This is a couple of years ago now, and she'd written something when she was younger, so we did that online. That was a really great experience. We had the first chapter online for free, and then we said, if you want to read on, then make a donation, and then people just donated whatever they liked. And then they got a daily update of the book until the end of the month, and then we made it available for people who donated more than $5. They got the ebook, and that was really interesting. And I'd like to pursue that model further. Yeah. Anyway.
One more question, Brian.
All right. Sorry, can you speak up?
Peter, Balder, and Jade.
Yes.
They were talking a great deal about things that effectively tie back to the absence of non-commercial text, much more collaboration. And certainly you said that as well. I'm just wondering, I think we lack an architecture for collaboration. Maybe we have tools, not necessarily philosophical or legal agreements on how to make that happen. So how do we move forward from that to enable the kind of worlds that we've been describing?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I mean, the legal question, of course. Oh gosh, repeat the question. That would be how do we move on in terms of the collaborative model? As I say, the legal parts are difficult. I don't think it's easy. I think as publishers, if we want to engage with our fans, our readers like that, I think we would probably have to have some sort of commons agreement with them. I'm not sure. All I know is that it's something that we have to explore. I think this is at a cutting edge is the wrong word, but it's certainly at the boundaries of what we like to accept in terms of publishing. I think there are issues for the authors themselves. You'd have to get agreement from the author. Not everybody wants people writing about their worlds. I mean, Hugh Howey is somebody who's embraced that, and that's obviously working for him. Yeah.
Do you want to respond to that, Ed?
I'm really sure what the question was.
So, do we need like a legal or more substantial framework to encourage collaborative projects?
Like a legal framework.
Not just
Or
legal,
not just, but just sort of general glue or
Right.
yeah.
I was just asked to also respond to that. So what do we need to, as a framework for collaboration? I think it's very difficult to see fluid collaboration under very strict copyright regimes. And I think that needs to be questioned. And also I think that there are a lot of mainstays of this industry, thinking about publishing, that need to be deconstructed. Single authorship, the term authorship, the idea of multiple authorship is more or less an iteration on single authorship. It's just like, one author, standalone genius, but just lots of them. That's not the idea. The idea is to get lateral collaboration, and get shoulder to shoulder with people and work together. And I'm a strong believer of this. I'm going to advocate it, put out there that collaboration is hard. We have to learn how to do it. The framework is really the people that you're working with, and they have to be prepared to be in that space. And you also need somebody to, really strong facilitation to lead you through that space. And I really believe this. Setting out, bringing people together and then trying to facilitate it from the inside doesn't work. You need people that are neutral to that dynamic, been there before, understand that, can read the dynamic, have a tool set, and can apply it. And for the kind of collaboration I'm talking about, and I think possibly for others getting into the area that you might be interested in, I think this is also very critical.
Okay, so we should wrap up for questions. So join me in thanking our speakers. So we'll break for lunch. We have about an hour, which is in this conference an amazing amount of time. So food will be out in the front. Don't stray too far, but feel free to meander around. And we'll herd everybody back here at 50 Tel. Also, if people who are speaking in the afternoon, if they could please come up before they grab victuals, and deposit their presentations with Thomas up here in front, that would be much appreciated. Thank you. Good. Let me just deal with this.
Come up? Oh, really? Okay. Oops.
question.